Welcome. Welcome to the Death Café, sponsored by the HeartWay and the California College of Ayurveda. And welcome to our first one in 2021. We'll get started in just a minute. I invite you to get a nice cup of tea or something that's warm and feels good. You can even get a little snack for yourself. And we'll get started in just a minute. For those of you that are new to the Death Cafe, I will share in just a couple minutes about what the Death Cafe is and its history and background, and then we'll get started. But I invite you in the chat window on YouTube and Facebook to jot any questions, concerns, anything that brought you here tonight. And I'll do my very best to get to your questions and comments, and we'll have a beautiful dialogue. Okay, so get yourself a cup of tea and we'll get started. And when you come on to the cafe tonight, let me know, where are you? Where are you in the country? I'm in Northern California, in Nevada City, California. We've had beautiful snow, and it's cold, but it's really beautiful. So often we have people from all over the world come to the Death Cafe, so it's very, very fun to see where you all are. So say hi when you come in, and that would be sweet. Good. We started right on time, so we'll give people a couple minutes. Good. Oh, I see there's several of you online. Where are you from? Write me a little note letting me know where you're from. I can't quite see that on my screen, but I will be able to see if you write a little chat. And welcome. Ah, great. Hi, Holly. Oh, from British Columbia, Canada. So lovely to have you here. Lori, lovely to have you here with us as well. And you're in Truckee, so you're so close to me. I was just up there snow skiing last week, and it was lovely. Oh, welcome, and nice to have you. And Holly, you're here with us. How beautiful. Wonderful. Good. So those of you online, if you have any questions or comments, please write it in the chat line, and we'll kind of address it. Something brought you here tonight. Welcome, Suzanne from Newport Beach. Lovely to have you. And Laura, it's beautiful. You know, this platform's so different because I can't see you, but I have to tell you, it's sweet to see you in the chat. It warms my heart. It makes me feel closer, so thank you. Hi, Jade, you're from British Columbia. Lots of people from British Columbia. And Lynn from Maine. How awesome. Great. We're starting to be from all over. How about, while people start joining us, we just take a minute to ground and come together in community. I don't know what your day was like, but it would be nice just to come into ourselves for just a moment. So if it feels right, go ahead and close your eyes and take a moment to connect with your breath. Just notice it. Notice it coming in through your nose, and allow it to drop down into your body, and give a gentle exhalation through your nose. And just witness your breath for a few breaths, allowing that exhalation to be part of your letting go process and becoming present together. Gently and deliberately direct your awareness to your breath and your body's sensations. And how about collectively we take a nice deep breath in and just pause for a moment and let it out with a sigh. Always feels so good. How about one more together? Nice inhale breath. Pause and release it with a sigh. And allow your body to rest in the exhalation. Take a moment or two to scan your body, starting with your feet and working your way up through your body. Pause at any place that communicates with you, any place you might have some tension, some pain or discomfort, and just use your breath. Visualize massaging that pain and that tension to loosen up and let go. And take a couple more moments to come up through your legs to your torso. And again, just find places that are speaking to you. I can feel a little bit in my neck right now. And use your breath to let it go. Use your mind's eyes to massage any of those places to just loosen it up. Connect with the sensory impressions of the airflow moving through you. Any lightning, sounds like my voice, temperature or texture that you notice. Just be the witness without any judgment. We're amazing beings with constant flow of energy. I invite you tonight to create a very gentle, accepting, and non-judgmental and grateful atmosphere within yourself, for yourself and all others that are connected with us tonight. The grace of gratitude. May you stay open to the roots and unexamined assumptions and beliefs, remaining open to all possibilities in healing, possibilities in connection, possibilities in growth and depth. And then I leave some space for you right now, whatever your intention might be tonight, to listen, to share, to absorb, to contribute, to learn, to grow, to gain comfort, whatever is flowing through you. Take this moment or two just for yourself. If there's something moving through you that may have got a little latched on from your day of tension or stress, I invite you to put it in a beautiful box and tie a red ribbon on it and just place that by your side, knowing that it'll be there when you're done, allowing you to be fully present, to take this time for you to be here. May all beings feel safe. May our mind, body, and spirit be connected with divine wisdom. May you feel loved, and may you know you are loved. From my heart to yours. When it's feeling right, go ahead and gently allow your eyes to open. Wonderful. I see several of you have joined since we've started. Welcome. Very much appreciate you being here, and we hope tonight fills your heart and your mind. We've got someone from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I know that place very well. I have a niece that used to live there. And a couple more from British Columbia. So beautiful. Let me spend a moment in time. Some of you may be at the cafe for the first time. Others, maybe you've joined us before. But I'll just do a brief history and background for you. And in the meantime, if something comes up that you want to ask or a subject you want to talk about, I had a very powerful Death Cafe on Monday, and the topic was euthanasia. And it was took us the whole time to kind of meander through our thoughts and feelings about that. Everything's welcome and invited. So the phrase Death Cafe, I want to share, identifies both a movement and the individual gatherings like we're having tonight that occur as part of the movement. The movement began in Switzerland when Bernard Krietz held his first Café Mortel in 2004. Later, a British web designer, John Underwood, was inspired to host a Death Café gathering in his home in London in 2011. The HeartWay's had the honor of conducting Death cafes since about 2013. So I'm really excited about that. Today, there's been as of yesterday, 11,981 death cafes in 75 countries. It's huge. It's beautiful. The cafe events are always offered on a nonprofit basis in an accessible, respectful, and confidential space. There's no intention of leading anybody to seeing any conclusion, selling any products, any course of action. And when we meet in person, which we did pre-COVID, we'd always serve refreshing drinks and always chocolate. Because if you're going to go, let's death by chocolate's not a bad way. So feel free to treat yourself something while we gather this evening. The overall objective of the Death Café gathering is to increase awareness of death with a view of helping people make the most out of their finite lives. People choose to take part of the Death Café from all over the world for so many different reasons. But it's worth noting that the Death Café movement has arisen spontaneously. It appears to be meeting a felt need and demonstrating that at least some people in our society and elsewhere are willing and able to talk openly about death and death-related subjects. The cafe gathering is not intended to be a grief group, a lecture, an educational session, a support group, or any avenues of promoting business or a cause. It really is a discussion group, open. And that's what I love about it. And that's why I chose the Death Café. There's a lot of other conversations and meetups on talking about death, but I love this because it's really an organic topic, an organic process where you bring in what's moving through your heart, and I will do my best to support it, and happy to have conversations between each other on the chat as well. So I'd like to open the cafe the way I often open the Death Café, and that is, what brought you here tonight? There's a whole bunch of other things you can do than being a Death Café. So something sparked something inside of you. Something inspired you to come tonight, even if it's curiosity. Chat with me. Let me know what brought you here tonight and what you're interested in some of the conversations being about. And I'd love to help that conversation go. I want to absolutely honor what's moving through you. And I don't think there's anybody in the world, this last year especially, that is not thinking about death. We've been faced with our mortality with COVID. So thank you. So Lori has a comment. Thank you. I'm here for the first time. I've been interested in working in the realm of death and dying process. Have started some stuff. Death Café is something that I've been curious about as well. Well, thank you, Lori, and I'm glad you're here and happy in any way to answer any questions you have about death and dying or working in the field of end of life. So I appreciate you sharing. I will say that every cafe is different. And in the, 9 years, almost 10 years that I've had the honor of hosting Death Café, not one has been the same. And I've done 1 to 2 a week of Death Cafes for that long. Even if we touch on the same subject, it really moves through in different ways. So it's quite fascinating. And just the fact that we're having a Death Café, a place where you can come and talk about death, dying, beyond, or related topics, really is a beautiful thing to have that space. I don't know about your environment that you live in and the culture that you live in, but death usually isn't a topic that's discussed at the dinner table. Well, if you're at my house, it is. But it's not often a topic that's discussed. Isn't it interesting that we plan and prepare for so many things in our life? We plan for birth, we plan for education, we plan for our children, we save for vacations. The list goes on. I'm sure you can think of a dozen more things that you plan for in your life. Yet, we don't plan for our death often. Why do you think that's so? Why do you think that's so? And I'm going to make an educated guess. It's our fear of the unknown, our fear of this life ending. Lots of reasons. Something to contemplate. Curious what your thoughts are. Hi, Becky. Thank you. I heard about the Death Cafe event on my Facebook post. I've never attended one before, and while it's 10 p.m. for me, bless your heart, I'm awake and ready to listen. Grateful for the ability to attend virtually. There have been a few in my city, but it has been a couple of years. I'm really glad you're here too. Is there anything on your mind, Becky? Anything that you'd like to ask or share about? We really want to hear from you as well. Hi, Holly. You're an end-of-life doula. Beautiful. And I'm interested to hear from others about their ideas, thoughts, and information regarding end-of-life and death practices in their world. Wonderful. Wonderful. Good. Well, I hope some of that gets addressed tonight. And I'm happy to share a little bit about death practices in my world. And the HeartWay has clients. I'm also an end-of-life doula and an end-of-life practitioner, which is a death doula with additional education in integrative medicine and integrative practices in counseling, advocacy, coaching, and end-of-life care rituals from around the world. So as far as death practices that I've participated in, and I sure would love to hear what others are, besides the traditional Western medical practices, I've had the honor of taking clients through the Tibetan Book of the Dead rituals. I was thinking especially of a beautiful client a few years ago who is actually Jewish but had connected her life into Eastern spirituality. She really wanted to study the Tibetan Book of the Dead rituals and really wanted to be as connected and mindful of her death in regard to these practices. So for several months, every day we read from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. We had discussions and rituals, and I cared for her body in accordance with the end-of-life rituals that are outlined in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's several great books out there where you can learn more about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and I think the most accessible in my heart for Western culture is the Tibetan Book of the Living and Dying by Soje Rinpoche. And that's a book actually that's been in my life for the last 30 years in my work. It's actually a beautiful guide for living. And that's what the Tibetan book is about, living into our dying, if you will. It's a beautiful book. And in those end-of-life rituals, there's the bathing of the body, there's the oiling of the body, and there's the preparing of the body at the end of life. In Tibetan rituals, you also utilize ghee, which is a clarified butter, and barley that is gently, lovingly placed on the body as you recite different scripture lines from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And it's to prepare the person that's died for their afterlife journey and the hurdles that they go through in the different bardos. And the bardo is like a dream state of life. There's the bardo of life, which we're in, the bardo of death, dying, the bardo of death. And they're beautiful practices that really help us be grounded in our heart and love someone through into their next journey. Well, besides that, the end-of-life practices that I utilize are POA and yoga nidra, graceful transitions. And those are all practices that I utilize when I'm supporting loved ones at the end of life and clients. Clients are my loved ones too. If you want to learn more about that, please feel free to reach out. So Lori, and I hope that was helpful at all. Lori asked about fear, denial, and adversiveness, attachment to life in our culture obsessed with youth that views death as a failure. It's an incredibly awesome topic to bring into the circle. And as I just started talking about some of the Eastern traditions where death is welcomed, honored, and practiced every day of life, so they're ready for death. It's an interesting topic. And you bring on a theme that's so near and dear to my heart that was part of my doctorate dissertation called Death Beyond Denial. And it's the culture that's driven, you use the word obsession, with youth that views death as a failure. I put a question out for us all to answer, and that is, how can a culture that views youth and views aging so differently not have a problem or a challenge facing death? One of the founding myths in our culture right now, if you will, is the anti-aging myth. Would you agree with that? I also want to put a challenge out there to buy any lotion or potion that doesn't say anti-aging on it. Coconut oil doesn't. That's what I use for my skin. But it's embedded in so many layers in the media and our advertisement and in our products and our healthcare that we want to stay youthful because aging is a failure, let alone death. And aging and youth is so supported, and aging is a lot harder to embrace. Well, I asked you this: how can we die besides the obvious deaths that occur from accidents and childhood diseases, but how can we embrace death if we're not even allowing ourselves to age? Aging, of course, and a natural death is the prelude to dying. Our body is dying little by little from the age early on in our 30s. Parts of ourself are starting to die. But we're not embracing that. We're not honoring that. And that can do nothing but stimulate our fear. That can do nothing but stimulate our denial and aversiveness to it. We also have a Western medical community that's trained that death is a failure. So doctors have to work through that for themselves. They have to work through that death may not be a failure. Reminds me of a story that I often share with my sister that died about a year ago. With her oncologist, my sister had breast cancer with mets to the brain. In the last month and a half of her life, she lost her ability to be cognitively present. And her MRI came back that said there were innumerable mets. That means there's too many to measure. And her oncologist said to me, I want to do full brain radiation. I gasped, to be honest. My sister was young. She was 49 years old. So we have that challenge of trying to do all that we can. But full brain irradiation was just beyond scary. However, I was her durable power of attorney for healthcare. And this is a little, hopefully, jewel for you in that, for those of you who are that roles for loved ones, is being an end-of-life, being an advanced directive holder or durable power of healthcare for our loved ones means your actions are going to be in their best interest and following what their wishes are. So I knew my sister would want to give it everything she could. She was a go-getter. She was so active. She was so full of life, and she wanted to live. She wanted to live desperately. At this moment, We wouldn't know that because she wasn't able to communicate it. So I said okay to the oncologist, and we started radiation, and she began to fail. She lost, she became incontinent. She lost her ability to take care of herself, eat, drink. She was having to be fed. So we 911'd her when she started to turn, and she ended up in the hospital. But when I was talking to her oncologist at the time of deciding whether to go on to have radiation or not, I said to the oncologist, do you think it is a good time to start talking about palliative care and hospice? And the oncologist said to me, you're way ahead of yourself. Don't go there. I've had people live a couple years on full brain radiation. It was hard for me to fathom, but I felt a little chided. I felt not heard for sure. My sister died 1 month from that day. 1 month from that day. Fast forward to when my sister was in the hospital, the oncologist came. We sat across from each other with my sister in between. She gave my sister a neuro exam, which she didn't pass. And she started to tell me that we can do this medical procedure, that medical procedure, and this. And I just looked her in the eyes and I said, Doctor, it's time to let go. It's time to let go. I know my sister would not want to be in this state. I want to bring her home. I want to love her through. I want her to have a chance to be with her family and friends and 2 young children. I want her to feel loved. I don't want her to be in the hospital being poked and prodded when in my heart I believe she's in her dying process. The oncologist burst out into tears. And my heart opened because now we're on a playing field of heart to heart. And she said, I know she wouldn't want to be like this. And I said to the doctor, doctor, you haven't failed here. You've given her, she had 10 years she was fighting cancer. You've given her so many amazing years to live at high quality. You did your part. And sometimes it's beyond medicine. It's time to honor this process of life, this finite life. And then I said to her, because I couldn't resist, I said to her, Doctor, you have a really amazing opportunity. And she did not do this with my sister. And my sister had no end of life planning. So it was very hard for the family. And you have an opportunity to hold hope and reality in the same breath and in the same sentence. With your terminal patients, you have the opportunity to let them know they have a terminal diagnosis, which my sister didn't know, and that you may have a year, 2 years, 5 years with the incredible new immune therapy drugs and treatments that we're doing for cancer. Cancer is being treated like a chronic disease, and quality of life is huge. So we have all that. At the same time, you can help them prepare. You can help them do their end-of-life planning, whether it's for a few months or years down the line. You can help them know that this life is finite. And how do you want to live until you die? Who knows what books will be written? Who knows what other organizations like MAD will be created? Who knows what beautiful legacy work those people can leave for their family? Who knows what healing can happen in relationships because they know they have a finite life. We all have that finite life. That's how I use the phrase death inspires life. Something to think about. Something to think about. I hope that was helpful. Thank you. These questions are really awesome. I'm going to keep going and see if I can catch some more. Barbara, hi, welcome. Last week after 10 months battle with cancer, my husband's quirky, brilliant brother drank a drug cocktail to end his pain in increasing paralysis. He invited us to be present and bear witness. Poignant and painful, it made me want to explore the death positive movement with the possibility of becoming a death doula. Not sure it's something I will actually pursue. Wonderful, Barbara, and I have the honor of knowing precious you, and I hope you'll give me a call on that, because I'd love for you to join our training program. It would be an honor to work with you. And so Barbara's talking about the Death with Dignity Act, talking about making a choice to end our life knowing we have a terminal illness. And, there's all kinds of expressions out there: death positive movement, good death, bad death, dying well. And they all have a place. You have to kind of figure out what fits for you. In our culture, these movements help to move us forward, help to move us in the conversation. And that's what I think the Death Cafe does, helps us in the conversation. As I shared that little story about my sister and one oncologist example, and I've been with many who hold that same place of death being a failure and not embracing death as part of life. Death is simply part of life. We signed that contract when we were born that we would have a finite life. And we also made some pledge somewhere that we were going to make the most out of our life, whatever that meant for each of us. So for me, the death positive movement is really acknowledging death, is really having those conversations about death, and doing the personal journey, doing the inner work to explore what death is to us, to facing our mortality, to shake in our boots for some, because there is a natural death anxiety that we all have. It's an instinct. We're born with it. It comes from the place of consciousness, our ego consciousness, that is just frightened to death, pun intended, to lose our control, So death positive to me is really having the conversations, is really being aware and learning how to embrace it as part of our life. We have a little tagline that says, embracing life, honoring death. They're really the same thing. If you are embracing life, you're honoring death. If you're honoring death, you're embracing life. They really are not mutually exclusive. I think it's hard for us, though, sometimes to not see them as mutually exclusive because of our dualistic thinking, because of the Western mind. And the Eastern mind isn't dualistic. They see all the colors of the rainbow in between. They've been culturated that way for many generations, many generations. And they have a lot of a Western spirit of them too. But they have that ability to have more of this possibility, more of this abstract, especially when it comes to death. So happy to share more about becoming a death doula. And I think it's beautiful. And in becoming a death doula, the first part of training for me is just this, is our journey. We have to be willing to walk the walk if we're going to walk by somebody else's side. In the exploration for each of us, I lovingly challenge each of us to face our fear of death. There's lots of ways to do that besides the conversation. And there's lots of tools to support that. And happy to share those for those of you that are interested. So thank you. Let me peek to see. I see there's some people that have attended other death cafes, and welcome. I want to make sure I'm not missing too much. So please forgive me. Here's a comment. I'm a craniosacral therapist, bless you, typically working towards increasing the health of clients. I'm curious as my practice progresses in working with gentle approach as an end-of-life therapy. Beautiful. Thank you for bringing that into our circle tonight. And, it's quite interesting. For many years, I paralleled as an end-of-life practitioner and a personal trainer. and working in the field of nutrition and functional therapy and first-line therapy and integrative medicine. And they're not oxymoronic, health and preparing someone for dying. I'd like to add we can die healthy. What does that mean? Well, there's lots of layers to that. Dying healthy for me is embracing our life. And by the way, it's embracing life. We're living until we take our last breath. Life is a process. Death is an event, a moment in our life. But I utilize, and this goes back to another comment about practices, so many different tools in working with families. One of the hardest things is writing this end-of-life practitioner training program, because there's not a 10-step model. I can give tools and I can give a model and a method, but each family is so unique. We have this collective connection. We all die the same heart failure, yet that process of getting there is very different. So it's necessary to have a beautiful basket of tools to support people at the end of life and even during terminal illnesses. That's where Western sciences lose me just a little bit, as we take our beautiful essence of ourself and we slice it into a little piece, and we don't quite address the other aspects of our being. And that would be the psychosocial, the psychospiritual level that have just as much of an influence on my heart. And I know I'm not alone, as the physical being. Sometimes I wonder, is it physical pain come first, or spiritual or emotional pain? The cart, the horse, the chicken, or the egg? I don't know what comes first, but I do know they're connected, and we truly can't separate them. So craniosacral therapy would be a beautiful tool to help with alignment and pain and emotions. I use yoga nidra, graceful transitions, all the time with clients to help them relax, transcend their pain, release their pain, and set their intention, their sankalpa, to create the world they want to live in. So to create the death they want, a positive death, pain-free, surrounded by love, working through the fear and anxiety of it. And it's very, very powerful. POA, another Eastern practice in guided visualization and meditation, is beautiful. Light touch is also a beautiful healing. And just being present. So there's lots of tools and practices that can be brought in. Massage is another one. So those are really, really helpful practices. Some are going to get healed through the heart. Some are going to get healed from the head, through the head. Some are going to get healed through their body. And some of us need a beautiful alchemy of all of that. There is not one answer. And when we stay there and open in this place, we'll be able to meet our clients and our loved ones to support them in their journey at the end of life. That's really the key. When I walk in the door of a family, I have a little mantra that I say before I walk in. I ask for grace, and I try and clear myself emotionally, physically, spiritually, and allow the space so that I can receive and hopefully be as present as I can for them. And that takes some work. That takes some work to do that. I invite you into that space within yourself. Let's see some more input. Lori says, I'm beginning to make bereavement calls for my local hospice this week. Beautiful. It's my first time. I wonder if you might have any suggestion or advice beyond the basics of training for these calls. I think I just shared one of them, is before you enter these calls, I don't know if you're doing them on the phone, I imagine right now, or Zoom during COVID, is to keep yourself as open, as clear as you can. I think that's something that I would emphasize again. If we're going to be a death doula, if we're going to be a grief counselor, if we're going to be an end-of-life practitioner, we're going to be loving someone through that we know, it is so helpful to do our own work and our own clearing. That way we're not projecting on those that are dying. And if we're so afraid of death, that's going to be felt. That's going to be felt in our words and our actions. So that would be a strong recommendation, is to take check with, if you're doing grief counseling, take check with your own grief and what's unfinished and what you can continue to work with. And then when you enter these calls, to be open for them, seeing what is coming through in their needs, hearing what questions they're asking. And sometimes silence is the best gift we can give somebody. Truly listening and holding someone. I think the other things I've learned through the years in making these calls is knowing that I don't have the answers, that I believe wholeheartedly that each of us has that within ourselves. I want to inspire if I can, nurture and love. And I think that's the last thing that I would want to say about that, Lori, is that, and all of you, is that it is really, truly about love. If someone feels loved, whether they're dying, whether they're grieving, whether they're sick, whether they're hurting, can go on as you imagine. If they feel our love, they're going to start healing. You might just give them the courage they need to take that next step. And at the end of life, that truly is what it's about. You know, during this time of COVID, of course, we're separated. The connection's harder in different ways. We miss that. We yearn for that. But we still can show up in love. We really can. There's so many facets of love. So many facets of love. Touch, of course. Listening. Sharing our words of love. Holding space. Learning how to hold sacred space. Learning how not to get into someone's space. And allow that for them in their learning, in their depth, in their growth. Honoring, truly honoring who they are. And an bereavement call, showing your love and hearing them and allowing them to be all that they are, messy and not. I hope that's helpful. I hope that's helpful. So Jade asked the question, these are just amazing questions. How do you come to terms with the death of your parents? Because it's affecting me at work at times. I don't feel like I'm compassionate enough to my coworkers. Ironically, I'm a nurse. And bless your heart, you're a nurse, and bow to you. Nurses are some of my favorite people. And nurses are human too. We have our limits. We have our emotions. We have our boundaries. And when I notice, I have an expression, you're welcome to use it. When I notice I'm feeling itchy-gitchy, which is tense, maybe short on patience, maybe I'm just feeling a tightness in my body, maybe I'm noticing I'm short and not as loving and caring as I really want to be with all my encounters, I know I have something brewing underneath that I need to pay attention to. You asked about how to come to terms with the death of your parents. That's important, coming to terms as much as we can with all death. But what I do want to say is that grief doesn't have a timeline. As long as we're living and breathing, we're going to be grieving. But it changes faces. The depth, the emotions, the sensations, they change over time. I have a sweet expression. If it's helpful, please use it. Time and tears heal. not just time. We need time and we need tears. Both are the alchemy in our healing. We can weep and weep and weep and weep till there's no more tears and think, well, haven't I grieved enough? Well, if enough time hasn't passed, there's still lots of healing and experiences to move through. I don't think I want to get over grief. Grief is a form of love. It gives us reflection of what a loving being we are. And having lost both of my parents, my mother just a little bit over a year ago, one of the things that helps me honor my grief, honor her death, is I keep her close. I keep her close. I keep her close in conversation. I keep her close in my heart. I let my tears flow when I'm really missing her. And I touch in with her. Ask her lots of mommy questions too when I need her, when I'm hurting. I ask her for that love that's only felt by a mom. And it's bittersweet. There's tears that flow, but there's a lot of comfort in having that connection and that relationship. I'll always remember a client that says to me, my husband died, but I haven't lost my relationship with him. We have a new relationship. No, it's not the same. No, it doesn't replace the one, but we've developed a new relationship. And I think these practices, these connections, give us an opportunity to come more and more acceptance, not only with grief, but with death. Because I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, and I honor what your belief is, but love is eternal. Love never dies. So that part of a relationship can continue to grow. Yeah. My heart is with you, Jade, as you grieve the loss of your parents. And I invite you to go a little deeper, get some support if that's what you're feeling you're needing. And one last little personal process that I do is I write a lot of love letters. And I write a lot of love letters to those that have died. And that really helps me. It also is one of the ways that I really feel connected. Writing letters to them and calling them love letters. I can hear the echoes of their voice sometimes. So maybe that would be a helpful tool for you. A few of you have made some really sweet comments on our sharing today, and it does bring tears to my eyes. Thank you. I feel so blessed to be here and to do the services that I get to do, and it's lovely to have you here with me, and I hope that these conversations take you deeper than before. So thank you. Yeah, someone commented that they like grief is a form of love. Really, really is a form of love. You know, I've held people just in so much pain of losing a loved one, and you feel a little crazy making at times. It's really, you lose yourself. You really lose yourself, and it's hard to find. And I say to those that are really, really hurting, sometimes I say just what I said here tonight about grief being a reflection of your love and how amazing and touching you love so deeply. And sometimes that scares us because it's painful. If we turn off our love, we're just not going to feel that. And there's so much sweetness in love, as you know. And we have to have all the energies present. We have to have the pain, the loss, the grief, the love, the suffering. They all help us experience the textures of this life, being human. That's what it's being a human being. It's messy, isn't it? It's really messy. It's all about growth and learning and loving to learn. I was shared that someone's, Kelly Jade, her sister, passed away when she was 8 years old, and this was her name. Um, Love, sending sisterly love. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. It's very hard to lose a young soul. Very, very, very hard. And I've helped many in that process. And they actually end up being the greatest teachers in this life. Greatest teacher. And you know, it wasn't brought up in the circle, but I have to share this 'cause coming through me as we're talking. Talked about fear and the anxiety of death. And, you know, I wonder, and I wonder if you've had this question as well. Why do we assume, and I'm going to bundle it in Western culture if you don't mind, and there's lots of exceptions. It's so dangerous to generalize, so please forgive me. But there's a chunk of us that really are afraid of death and afraid of what's beyond the veil. And I ask this question of us. Why do we assume that it maybe is not better than what we're experiencing here in this life? We truly don't know. Nobody knows. So many cultures have shared with us beautiful belief systems. Faiths and religions around the world have beautiful, elaborate narratives and stories and scriptures to share what's beyond. But the fear and the afraid of giving this life up sometimes is about the fear of the unknown. And when we're fearing the unknown, if we're fearing the unknown, we're afraid of the worst possibility, I'm assuming. Otherwise, we wouldn't be afraid if it was going to be okay and beautiful. And so I'm wondering why we go there. It's a beautiful philosopher, a gentleman by the name of Krishnamurti. Some of you may have heard of him. And he has a saying that maybe we're not afraid of the unknown, but we're afraid of the known leaving. It's an interesting twist on that. And when I think of that, I go to that strong ego mind that doesn't want to lose control, doesn't want to lose control of this life. And that has a lot, there's a lot to be said in that, I think. But I still propose that question. Why are we assuming that after this life, after we die, whether you may not believe in another life after this, after we die, maybe it's something even more magical in this life? It's a contemplation worth having for sure. Why do we assume that? Kind of interesting. Yeah. Holly says, I think that we often fear the loss of all we know. I believe so too. I believe so too. And that takes up something I was going to say that I had lost thought on for a minute, is the fear in us really is heightened when we have so much attachment to our thoughts. So I know many of you are meditators, and I know many of you have heard of meditation. Why is that the rave? Why is that so helpful? And there's many reasons it's so helpful, but I want to share one that's related to our conversation, if I might. And that is, when we meditate, in many traditions, it's a form of dying. When we sleep, we die and awake in the morning. So is death but yet a process of letting go? So what do I mean by saying meditation is a form of dying? Well, what meditations do, and by the way, the practice of using psychedelics at the end of life and to work through fear of death is a similar concept to what I'm about to share. In meditation, our goal is to transcend this world we live in and to go within and to come connected to our layers of consciousness. our subconscious, our soul, our psyche, our spirit, the place, and the way I say it to present it as streamlined as I can, to connect with place and space inside of us that is beyond words, that has no words to describe it. And is death not a little bit of that? So when you're meditating, you're practicing letting go. You're practicing letting go of those thoughts and the attachments that we have to it. And in that letting go process, we start to become more and more comfortable with this life. We start to become more and more comfortable with death. Because death in many traditions is that but the spirit leaving the body at the end of life. That but the body leaving the end of life. So that's another beautiful practice for all of us, is meditation. Yoga Nidra is a form of meditation and visualization that also helps us transcend those thoughts and start to explore and discover lots of different essences and spaces within ourselves that might just be what it's like to die. You know, speaking with many people that have had near-death experiences, they say a couple things consistently. Number one, they don't want to come back. Number two, it was amazing and beautiful and very, very hard to describe in words. But there's got to be something in the fact that they don't want to come back. So all of that, reading and experiencing and also being with thousands that have died, really have expanded my consciousness to a space of, and I'm a meditator and practice Yoga Nidra, that this might not be a scary thing. And in fact, there's a little awe in there and wonderment. People ask me, a favorite question that I get asked is, how do you want to die? And I say slowly. And they look at me like, something's wrong with you. Probably, but I want to die slowly because I don't want to miss anything. I've dedicated my life to being present to death and loving people through. And I don't want to miss something. And I'm led to believe, by holding my clients, there's something special, something peaceful, something awe-inspiring, something that I believe I want to discover. So, just some thoughts. Becky says, I believe what happens after death is better than life on earth, or at least different and not in a negative way. I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I sure feel it's different. And I also believe I really believe it's beyond our understanding. And when we start to practice these different methods and practices like meditation and Yoga Nidra and relaxation, we get an opportunity to get a glimpse at something beyond what we know and start to be what we feel and what we sense. So I really encourage you, especially those, and there's a couple of you tonight, which I just love, that are interested in becoming end-of-life practitioners of some type, is that you incorporate these practices within yourself. Yeah. What I do know is that there's a whole lot out there to still learn and grow. And I hope you can continue to keep yourself open to possibilities and questioning and curiosity. And if you're searching for that answer, I don't know if we'll find it this in this life, in this body. I think we're going to have to do the walk ourselves to learn a little bit more of that great mystery. And in the meantime, we can embrace this mystery that we live in, because it sure is a mystery, and one that I hope brings you so much love and depth and growth and peace in your life. We are at our hour. I'm so grateful and appreciative for your time, and I'd love to end with a little blessing I wrote, a little metta prayer, which is the loving kindness prayer. And I had in mind endings and beginnings that feel ever so bittersweet. So I share this with you in closing. Feel free to connect with me on the HeartWay if there's something left unfinished from tonight. We've got lots of beautiful programs, a lot of them free for the community, and love to share with you. So endings and beginnings feel ever so bittersweet. May we evolve from what was. May all find hope for what can be. May forgiveness burst through our hearts. And may you find faith in your dreams. Love will endure. With love from my heart to yours, please be safe, be loved, and be you until we meet again.